Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can see in the picture today, let's start the story of part 7 of a story where DxD universe reacts to betrayed Villain-Issei. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations. Now, let's get into part 7. The audience settled down for the viewing, as Revan was almost ready to play when he wondered if he could start bringing the other gods and goddess from different pantheons. He knew that some gods will start getting in the way of this age choices. Something on your mind, Revan? The one who asked was Mary. As he spoke, nothing much, was just thinking about bringing some other gods. Many of the guests became worried knowing full well some of the gods' arrogance and attitude, and seeing how a mere human for hunter, Issei, and former human for concept, Issei can cause problems. The others were also a bit concerned, while those that truly cared for Issei were scared on what may happen to Issei, since he does not wish to work with the factions due to his experiences. Even Revan knew when some of the gods come, things will become intense. He gave a glance towards Ophis and Lilith, who nodded. They will be ready if the gods try any funny business. Even Hunter, Issei knew that some of the gods will be nothing but a headache. He was happy that Zalgo or Concept were not here, since they were training the Issei of this universe along with Arcadia. And God forbid if she was here, she has no tolerance to anyone that threatens her or her loved ones. Are you sure, Revan? They might cause problems. Revan looked at Sursages, who asked. As he responded, if they do, I already have some people ready to deal with them. You need not worry about that. Sursages nodded, the last viewing and his utter defeat at the hands of Hunter. Isaiah showed how dangerous Issei can be even without a sacred gear. Just some power tools and that was more than enough. Even the others wondered who these people are that would be dealing with. While some believed it would be the Isseis of the Multiverse, they didn't know if they are dangerous or problematic, and that was what scared them. Mary and Aimled were aware of 2 Isseis that they already have met, aside from Hunter. Issei, and they knew that both of them could easily handle any gods that can cause problems. Well, we are already past time, we should get started with the viewing. Revan spoke, as both him and Hunter. Issei knew that Riser and his siblings won't be liking this one, since this was due to what happens in the story to both of them. Riser shuddered, knowing exactly what was going to happen, while his peerage, harem, was calming him down. Claire and Revel were equally concerned, knowing that Hunter, Issei, was not the type to back down from a bounty, and hope that Riser survives the whole ordeal. The scene changes to John having a cup of coffee at 7 in the morning. He sighed, knowing full well this was how his life became long before he met Issei and Tiamat, along with the rest of her company. He vividly remembered on what had happened to him before he accidentally stumbled in this world via wormhole. It's been years since I came here, John mused as he took a sip of coffee, as he knew on how strong he had become, thanks to being trained by monsters like Issei and Tiamat, and later Ingvild as well. Hunter? Issei looked around, seeing the reaction. It was filled with confusion. He was concerned on how some of them would react, knowing what amount of injustices John had gone through. As some of them looked at him, Claire then asked, So you have an idea what happened to him? Hunter. Issei nodded in agreement, as he responded, You bet. And trust me, it ain't going to be pretty. Just how bad was it? Yusaku asked, to which Hunter? Issei responded, You have no idea. Just watch. Revan's words made the others wonder what was happening to John, and how did he come here? Flashback starts. Before meeting Issei and Tiamat, John was once a student of the Beacon Academy. He was a bright child, although ever since his transcripts were revealed by a certain bully known as Cardon Winchester, everyone turned their backs on him. His friends, family, you name it. All the Beacon students wanted to suffer him, hurting him past his aura, and even despite the protection from professors and the headmaster Ashban himself, no one could completely stop the torment that had happened to John. His partner Paranikos, who he had trusted, exposed his transcripts to her team and her sister team, Team RWBY, causing them to hate him, and when Carton did eventually expose him after saving him from the Ursa Major in the Forever Falls, he exposed his transcripts and things only worsened. His family disowned him without hesitation, leaving him to rot. Only a select few were there to support and be there for him, the professors being one of them. He was often seen limping whenever he walked out from combat class or almost anywhere in the hall. The audience witnessed what the blonde went through. Many were horrified and angered. Those that valued family goals were even more angered. Revan then explained. Okay, to start off, John comes from the world of Remnant, so basically he is a sort of an alien. So that is one thing. I will make the explanation short. Basically, this is a world that has a resource known as dust and power known as aura, which basically is their variation of magic that protects them from injuries, but makes it feel like magic. However, they still feel the pain from the blow. And without aura, the injuries will heal at a normal human rate, but aura won't protect you from decapitation or having your body sliced in half. As for dust, I will get into it once it get properly revealed. The audience nodded in understanding, while some were intrigued by aura, knowing what it is capable of. They wished to experiment on it, and find out more on their own. Such people primarily included the smart ones like Ajuka and Azazel. Then we have semblances. A semblance is the manifestation of one's innate and personal power as an ability unique to each individual, with the effects varying greatly from user to user. With the sheer number of people unlocking their semblances, it can lead to unrelated people gaining similar abilities. The nature of one's semblance is noted as representing an aspect of their character. However, a person's semblance can be similar to the semblances of their parents or other family members. Those that use semblances are able to manipulate certain physical phenomena according to the nature of their power. They are basically weaker versions of magic left behind by the brother gods. The audience was intrigued with some Lycaon pondering on the brother gods. He found their name to be familiar. This expression was noticed by Biter, who asked, "Father, is something the matter?" Odin spoke in response, "Brother gods, they seemed familiar." Vidar and Thor wondered what this meant, as Revan then explained. And now we get to the meat of the stuff. Teams RWBY and Team GNPR, they both were teams that were in Remnant, and they wanted to fight against creatures of darkness known as Grimm, and to defeat them. They were training to become huntsmen and huntresses, said people that will protect the world from Grimm. As for John, he was formerly a part of Team JNPR. However, as tragedy struck, his transcripts were revealed, and his miseries began. The audience started to feel bad for what John went through. As Hunter, Issei continued. I met the kid when he was at his lowest. Turns out his own family hated him for mere papers. Hunter. Issei spoke, as he continued. Worse, when he first came here, he was tattered and injured, beaten closely to death. I didn't know why, but I believe this viewing is going to show you. The audience noted in understanding, with the Gremory family minus Ria's not looking forward to John's life. Several others also had a scowl, also not being a fan of what John is going through. However, everything had a silver lining. Despite what happened to him, only a select few supported him, which included Team CFEY, and from his family, the Terracotta Arcs. They were still by his side, and several more were also by his side, but couldn't show due to the Arc clan's controlling nature. To top it all off, they sent Alexandria Arc to replace John, as she was happily accepted by John's former team, and soon the beatings became worse. Seeing this, John asked Osborne to expel him since that was the last straw. The headmaster didn't want to do so since him along with the professors saw potential in him, but with John requesting, or one shoulder side begging, he accepted his proposal. The audience felt sad, while some felt angry at how John had to lose his dream. The faction leaders were shaking their heads in disappointment. They knew that this was going to bite them in their ass in the end. Hunter? Issei couldn't help but inwardly smirk seeing this. He knew that this was how things would get, and what happens to the Arc clan. However, some like Mary noted Alex and gave a glance towards Ryu. She soon turned her head away, hoping that Ryu does not turn out to be like either Alex or Ryu. John was walking towards the Terracotta residence, telling them of their latest news. However, just as he was about to head off, a wrecking ball tackled him, sending him flying to the tree. He coughed up blood as he looked at his attacker. It was none other than Baldoria's Espanini Arc. He is a tall man who has slightly long, messy brown hair. He wears the standard Kronos uniform, a black suit with a purple dress shirt and a black and yellow tie. Who the hell is this average-looking guy? Baiku spoke mockingly, to which Valerie added, True, and honestly, he seems kind of pathetic. Revan paused the viewing, knowing what will happen. Not only that, I sense something off with him, like he is extremely evil. Nick spoke with a confused tone as Ingvild glared at her before turning her gaze for her hypocritical tone. That's because his name is Baldurius Esfagnini Arc. He is one of John's uncles, the audience minus Hunter. Issei was surprised by this, as Mary asked, wait, if he is his uncle, then why did he attack him? It was because he wants him dead. The audience looked to Hunter with shock in their eyes as Claire asked, what do you mean, want him dead? It means they want him killed. Unlike most of the clan that does not want him dead, for now. This one hated John for disgracing the Arch clan, and he wanted him dead. I won't explain much of the Chronos until a later viewing, but all you can know is that they are the most powerful huntsman guild in all of Remnant, so Baldur wanted to remove the stain of a weakling that hails from the legacy once and for all. That is how things became like this, Revan explained, as Hunter. Issei spoke. Yep. And Baldur is what you can best describe as a fanatic at his power level concept. Me theorized him to be middle class when it comes to power, but it is probably the strongest that you can come up with in a place like Remnant. Hunter. Asil spoke, as he thought, unless you consider those two remnants. The audience were angered by this. Even Hades and Nyx were angered by how John was treated, with Sursages asking, may I know what kind of the family this Arch family is? They were one of the oldest families that exist in Remnant. There are two variants of the Arch family. The one you will see here is the one that will be showed in a lot of the viewings. They were once the kind that puts family first over everything, but in the recent years, it was all about reputation and greed that they care about now. Worse, they will even hunt those that oppose the will of the clan, as they like to call it. Basically, it is the will of the elders, and those that oppose them will be either forcefully convinced or destroyed. This is common recently in many timelines, with several having a better Arc clan. But very few Arc clans are good. They only pretend to maintain a family charade, but in reality only care for reputation and power. Hunter. Issei then added, they are arrogant and condescending due to their semblances they have in their weapons, which will be shown in the viewing. This is just one of them, and their best feat is them destroying an entire kingdom with their weapons and semblances combined. They control the weak in this timeline, along with several others with an iron fist, and they hate it when someone does not obey them. Hunter. Issei explained the situation as he witnessed the audience's expression. The audience frowned upon hearing this, with many starting to get angry, as is alas, tell me, how many has this Arc clan become a problem to our universe? I can't reveal everything, but they have become a problem in several timelines. So much so, the only way to deal with them is by wiping them all out, leaving nothing behind. This Arc clan have even reached your world in some timelines as well. The audience were getting angered by this, with some clenching their fists with anger, as Venelana spoke with anger. They call themselves valuing family first, they should be ashamed of themselves of doing that to him. Theosida spoke in agreement, true on that, they have shamed their ancestors from their actions. I agree, mother, father. I feel bad for John though. Surzex spoke with anger, agreeing with his parents. Even Riaz had some sort of agreement to this, although she did not show it. Trust me, you will be seeing this in several timelines. Revan spoke, as he replayed the viewing, as the audience were not looking forward to John's suffering. Uncle? Why? I thought I can meet Saffron. Baldur had a look of anger in his eyes, as he threw a wrecking ball aimed at John's chest. He felt like his ribs were shattering. Is it not obvious, you disgrace? Tonight is the day you will die. Baldur once again prepared his wrecking ball and aimed at his chest as John instinctively avoided the attack. He then spoke with anger towards him. I have already left Beacon, and I plan to no longer disgrace the clan in any way. Baldur had an evil smirk as he prepared another wrecking ball. John had to think of something quick, else he would be done for. Wait, they plan to kill him? Leif asked with horror, as Yusaku added with anger, and do thus so-called parents even know of this? To answer your questions, yes, he does plan to kill John, and to Yusaku, no, the parents don't know of this. The audience were horrified and startled by this, with Mickey asking, they plan on killing the boy for fraud, what kind of a family is this? Mary wanted to speak, but Claire stopped her as she gave a glance to her mother. She may not be as bad as John's mother, but she is no saint. Mary also was angry at what the Arcs were doing to John. They have really become twisted as time passes, and all because of the current leadership, they have become like this. As for his parents, that being Nicholas, his father and Juniper, his mother, for them John is already dead to them. The audience were getting angered, but the most angriest were the ones that were parents. They really are disgraces to the word parent. Their anger was well displayed in the audience. Elder once again flung the wrecking ball, as John kept on running further inside the Mistralian forests. The wrecking ball destroyed some of the trees as John instinctively ducked, avoiding the strike. He turned behind to see Balder having an evil, sadistic grin. "Try dodging this, you disgrace." Balder slammed the wrecking ball, which hit a rocket-propelled direction towards John's head. As he looked in horror, he tried to dodge the attack, but it was a direct hit. Balder continued to strike him with blow after blow, with John barely dodging. However, he couldn't keep dodging forever. He was breathing heavily. Seeing this, Balder struck him hard on the stomach that sent him flying. He crashed upon a tree. He coughed up blood as he tried to escape, but Balder unleashed one more strike, sending him to the ground. He couldn't hang on for much longer. The audience were worried from this. Some looked in horror and fear seeing John like this. Grafia and Yasaka covered the eyes of the kids so that they aren't subjected to this horror. Hunter. Issei was watching with anger, remembering what had happened to his John, something that was noticed by some people in the audience. As Arthur asked, "I hope they received what was coming to them." Hunter. Issei did not respond. He knew what had happened to Balder, whose life was eternally suffering till he was put out of his misery courtesy of John, who also tortured him to death. Elder stopped on the ground. John was left in a half-dead condition. His bones were broken, his clothes were tattered, and he was bleeding in all conditions. Some of the audience kept their hands on their mouth in horror. Some were crying seeing John's state, with them seeing him to be similar to his Issei, while several were angry and disgusted seeing the torture of an innocent man. "I hope those fuckers get punished for their actions." Valerie spoke with anger in her voice. "Who is toi say our wish won't come true." Seeing this, Balder left John, half dead, but not before leaving a parting message. "You got what you deserved, you disgrace. You should have never opposed the clan and tried contacting its members. Now you will die a horrible death." Balder walked away. However, unbeknownst to him, John was alive and well. Many were horrified by this. Some were gritting their teeth in fury seeing John's state. Even Hades and Nyx had looks of anger on them. However, their anger was because of Balder's arrogance and attitude, and not John's suffering. As for now. Flashback ends. John completed his cup and had a scowl on his face. He then spoke with anger in his voice. "Just you all wait. I will live my own life, and none of you will get in my way." However, his thoughts were snapped when someone called out to him. This was Tiamat in her maid costume. As she spoke, "John, Master has called you downstairs. Your match with Phoenix is today." Tiamat spoke with slight spite, knowing how her eyes are as John nodded. He got into his gear and headed down to deal with them. He is now wearing a white polo shirt, blue vest, a dark gray blazer that is short sleeve and reaches out until his legs, tie, jeans, leather gloves, and a cowboy hat. Issei had worn similar clothing, except his pants were now jeans, and his shirt was made of expensive cotton. Tiamat looked away with a red tint. She still was not used to herself being in that costume. Some of the males took note of John's clothing since, as Azazel asked, "Is he Hunter?" Issei spoke with a smile. "Yes, and he is about to slay some hoes." Some of the Phoenix women glared at Hunter Issei for his verbal comment, but he did not care. "You have arrived." Issei had won his clothing. He had a bottle of water before he had left. He then asked, "Did you pack holy bullets?" John only gave a nod as he watched Toysai consume the full bottle completely. "Well then, let's go. I also packed mine." John nodded as the duo left the room. The audience wondered on how the match is going to go. The only ones afraid are the ones in the Phoenix peerage, or more precisely the Riser Phoenix and his peerage. Even Claire and her family were worried by what was going to happen with Mary calming her friend down. The scene changes to the Orc Club room where Issei and John, along with the Gremry peerage, were present. Issei looked at Rias with curiosity as she spoke. "Alright, here is the plan. Kibbit, can you?" "Okay, princess, I will stop you right there." Issei cuts her off and speaks. We will handle this, John, let's go. John nodded. The less time he spends with this red-haired cow. John and Issei left off, as Riaz exclaimed, wait. Riaz looked to see both of them gone. She sighed and looked at her peerage. She soon foolishly commands her peerage. Riaz had a frown upon this when she had heard the narrator speak of her in such a low manner, and when John still considers a red-haired cow. Oh, and if you are wondering why John hates all red-haired girls, the reason is because of Paranikos. She was one of the first to abandon him. So that is why, Hunter. Issei explained, to which the audience nodded in agreement. Ria still had a frown. She was nothing like this Paranikos. Riser was worried on what may happen to him. He remembered on how he had fought Issei, and on how had beaten him. He gave a glance to his peerage, who were all worried on what their fates were going to be. Issei and John looked to see several of Riser's peerage as he gave a glance towards John as he spoke. I will clear the trash. You got it? Guess the big ones are for me, then. John nodded as he brought out his twin pistols and dashed towards them. He hid his presence, and reached above a tree where he could see the three girls belonging to Riser's peerage aiming at Burand, Mary and Ansharia rushing towards the Orc building. He took aim and fired 2 bullets aimed straight towards the heads of Mary and Ansharia, which caused an explosion as they dropped to the ground in a glowing light. Duquans of the Phoenix family have been eliminated, Grafia announced to the group, as Burand looked in horror, seeing the attacker to be John, who was blowing out the smoke from his gun. Holy bullets, almost a death sentence to the devils. What do you think? Anger could be seen on Burand's expression. John could be seen smirking, looking at her. The 2 peerage members were pale upon seeing this, as they looked to see Hunter. Issei, who gave a nod to them as he spoke. Let's see if the Phoenix regeneration can keep you alive or not. Hunter. Issei spoke, to which the girls were shivering. Some were comforting them while glaring at Hunter. Issei, who did not give any shits about them. Urant was seething seeing this. How dare this lowly human be the one to kill her? He was going to regret doing, attacking her peerage and insulting their Lord Riser. In her anger, she fired a massive fireball towards John, who didn't seem to move. She smirked seeing that meager human dead. Baran was not smiling like her counterpart. She knew that someone trained by a human that can slay gods is not someone you want to cross. Yeah, days. John could be seen on a different tree with a smirk. As before Baran could react, he had grabbed her hand and used his leg to push her in a manner such that her face was on the ground. Just cause you are a devil, you look down on someone who can clear you down because he is a lowly human. John aimed his pistol at her head and spoke. See you? John pulled the trigger and bam. Urant's head exploded, causing her head to fall down as a green light soon released as Grafia announced, 1 pawn of Riser has been eliminated. Urant was pale seeing on how John had killed her. Mary then asked to Hunter. He say, Hunter, what did you train the boy in? Well, it was mostly me and Tiamat that trained him. We made sure he could dodge attacks instantly, and we made sure his aura and semblance were used to their maximum. I trained him to use it to its full potential, and trust me, his semblance is basically a weaker version of Wolverine's healing factor, and can use aura techniques. The audience nodded as Tiamat looked a bit keen on what she is witnessing. She wanted to see on how much she had trained this boy. Hunter. Issei looked at her expression and smirked. He knew Tiamat saw John as her own, and she doesn't take kindly to those that harmed him in any way. He wondered if this Tiamat can change, since she is hated in some of the realities due to what she does due to her grudge with Drake. In the meantime, Issei was walking across only to find him being suddenly overtaken by an explosion as the attacker was revealed to be Eubelina, Riser's queen. The woman had a smirk. She looked towards her master and gave a blushing smile, hoping he would reward her. But bam! It only lasted for a split second as she was immediately shot in the head. Eubelina dropped dead with the bullet being placed right in her skull. As a green light enveloped her, Grafia then announced in surprise, Riser's queen has been eliminated. The attacker was revealed to be Issei, who had a smirk on his face as the gun that he was holding was smoking. He then spoke with a mocking tone. Damn headshot. Eubelina was pale seeing her fate. This was not the way she was supposed to be beaten, not this easily. Riser held her hand to calm her down. Despite the fear in his expression, he still chose to calm her down along with the rest of the girls in his peerage who he was trying to calm down. The Phoenix family were even more worried, with Claire hoping that Issei does not wipe them out. Claire did not want to see her crush turn out to be like this. "The kills are not going to stop, father?" Ingvald asked her father, as Lucius responded, "No, it only gets worse." Fortunately, their tone was low such that many couldn't hear them. Those that did were wondering what may happen. Claire was shivering in fear as Mary desperately tries to calm her down. Bryzer was seething in rage seeing this, as he unleashed a storm of flames towards him while shouting, "Die, you bastard!" Issei only smirked in response as he brought out a cigar and started to smoke it. He looked at the approaching storm. He leaped in the air and spoke while removing his cigar. "Well, as much as I would rush through the flames, these clothes will get burnt. They are expensive, even though I did stole them." Some of the audience had a frown while some were glaring at Issei, as he spoke with a shrug. "What? Those belonged to one of my targets that I had to kill. Plus, I did like it so I kept it. My client was going to destroy them anyway. Might as well keep one of those." Issei spoke, as the audience still kept staring, as Issei spoke. "You might miss the next scene, it will be intense." The audience turned their gaze as they saw how Issei was going to fight against Reiser's peerage. Issei turned his attention. He brought out Ragnarok and instantly sliced down any of the peerage members that were present. They were immediately sliced into pieces before anyone could react or notice, much to their shock and horror. He soon turned his attention to Revel and Mihi. He immediately kicked her in the air and decapitated her from her body, as they all glowed due to what happened. Griefia then announced, 5 pawns, 2 rooks, 2 knights and 1 bishop has been eliminated. Everyone was shocked. It happened so quickly. He soon turned his attention to Revel, who seemed fearful as she tried to fly off with her phoenix wings but was immediately grabbed by Issei, who slammed her to the ground. He soon grabbed her by the throat and spoke. "One of the 2 phoenix brats. Who should I kill first?" Revel was hyperventilating and crying with fear. He really was a monster. Revel herself was terrified and fearful. She regretted listening to Rias since she was afraid of what is going to happen. Revel was tempted to calm her down, but he remembered what she had done. He wondered if his Issei would kill her or not. As Sayerg had spoken, looking at this. "You know that she did, right?" Reiser nodded in response. As he once again glanced to Travel, he can only hope she learns from this. Reiser was worried on what he would do to her. In the meantime, the audience was stunned as Lord Phoenix yelled, "What the hell is going on? I really don't know." Rias must have gained a powerful ally or 2 powerful allies to help her. Ziacides commented in a surprised tone, seeing how much of Reiser's peerage has been annihilated. As Venelana noted in response, "True, and both of them are human, and they are slaughtering devils like it is nothing." Venelana was also surprised, however, unlike Ziacides, who was open to the idea of marriage. Venelana was against, so she was a bit happy that Rias was winning. Venelana was surprised by her counterpart's actions. While she supported Rias's marriage with Razor, her counterpart did not. Ryvan looked at this and spoke while pausing the viewing. "Yes, Venelana, in some timelines there are minor and major differences. This is one of the minor differences. In one timeline, you are against Ria's marriage, in a different one you are in for the marriage." Venelana nodded in understanding as Ajuka asked. "Then what is the major?" Revan then spoke in response. Assassino being a pervert, being hyper-intelligent and being hateful and aggressive due to being deceived, basically his concept counterpart. As an example, the audience gulped at this. They remember on how Lavinia's fate was when she fought against Issei. Ajuka nodded in understanding despite being fearful of this. Now, irrespective of the changes, different changes leads to different results, separating different timelines and universes. Revan generated a webbing that had multiple parts. Many were surprised by what is happening. As he spoke, "I will get to the explanation at a later time. Let us watch the viewing. We only have one more part after this, the season finale." The audience nodded in understanding. They all were interested in the webbing that he had generated. However, they were wondering on how this would change. In another room, Grafia was watching the fight with fear in her face, while the other Satans were watching with worry, watching the onslaught. So that's the legendary supernatural bounty hunter, Ijuka asked as Sosicius nodded. He remembered the brutal beatdown at Issei's hands with the disrespect that came to him. He will never forget that. Hunter. Issei can only shake his head in disappointment knowing on how some of these devils hold grudges and then get killed by him. It was not just devils, many of the supernatural had this problem in his timeline. Sosicius also was disappointed in his counterpart. He could only hope that this one can learn his lesson. The one that kicked your ass. Sosicius nodded to Seraphiel's words as she added with a smile, he does kind of look cool. Seraphiel could only deadpan at Seraphiel's words, as Griefia could only look at her in disbelief. She remembered on how the man threatened not only her son, but also killed Lord Agar's, and dared her to do anything about it. Some of the devils looked towards Seraphiel with utter disbelief, who only shrugged in response as she spoke, I agree with my counterpart. You're kidding, right? Griefia muttered in horror as Sosicius calmed her down. Sosicius could only sigh at Seraphiel's action. Miliches also seemed worried on what is going on in the screening, and his mother's fearful expression. Zigvara was looking down in sadness, while Olivia and Bayfield calmed her down. Hunter? Issei smirked in happiness hearing Seraphiel's comment about him. He always wondered what the other Satans saw him to be, except for Siskan over there. All others seemed good. So what should we do? Sosicius was hoping the other Satans would agree to capture him out of fear as Ijuka spoke, do nothing but observe. He isn't after us or the rulers of Kwa. So someone else in Kwa must be his target. If we intervene, we might draw out his ire, and he'll target us. Sosicius nodded, albeit he had terror on his face. He then spoke with fear. I don't feel safe with that monster, especially when they are near Ria's Ursona. He clenched his hands into a fist. He wished to deal with Issei, but he was terrified that he may not remain alive. Glad I made an impression, Serkant. Sosicius glanced towards Hunter. Spoke that he did not bother provoking him in any manner as Rias asked with fear, why did you call HMT that? Many that hate the Gremry siblings call him that, so I also started calling him that. Concept is one of those Rias gulped in fear. She was already terrified of both Concept, Issei and Hunter. Issei, she wondered how many more Isseis hate her. Sosicius could only look down in sadness. He could only hope that his Issei does not hate him. His family calmed him down. Seraphiel noticed this and smirked, and thought, to think that the strongest devil is terrified of you, you must be really something, Issei. Seraphiel continued to watch the fight. Thanks, Seraphiel. Hunter. Issei spoke while drinking some beer. Seraphiel looked at him. She wanted to respond to the compliment, but she noticed the beer and instead spoke, wait, where did you? Check your side of your seats, everyone. Revan has set up some drinks. Just press the left or right to scroll through the drinks or type the name of the drink, press enter, and the drink will come into your hand. The audience was surprised by this, as they all decided to have a drink. Revan smirked as he wondered if he would add a food console as well. He decided to do it after the viewing. Back in the fight, Issei was making Revel gulp in fear, as she was crying. She then spoke, please spare me. And why should I? Issei asked, to which Revel was pleading. She then spoke, I will do anything. Please spare me. Issei thought for a moment before smirking, you will do anything, right? Yes. Issei then spoke in response, meet me sometime in the future, so Nasitro will contact you when I need you. Once you are done, I will let you know what I need, betray me, and I will make sure you beg for death. Revel only nodded in response as she teleported in a green light as Grafia announced, one bishop of Riser Phoenix has been eliminated. Issei soon leaps in the air to have a final confrontation. The Phoenix family sighed in relief despite what Revel did, they didn't want her to die horribly. Revel herself was relieved. Some frowned at the cowardice, but understood it was her only way out of the situation. You know the saying, cowards do survive, sometimes. Revan thought as he watched the viewing. In the meantime, John looks to see the Gremry peerage already arrived. As he spoke, you're late, Gremry. We will be the ones to handle. Rias and the others were surprised to see the location completely empty, with the exception of Issei, clashing against Riser. Where is everybody? John then spoke. If you didn't hear the announcement, only Riser remains, and Issei is fighting against that phoenix. Jaune spoke as Rias, and her peerage just remained helplessly with Jaune continuing. You should have stayed in the clubroom watching the show cause you are contributing nothing. Hyoudou and Matsuda were the angriest as they were about to dash towards Jaune, but Akino stopped both of them. She shook her head remembering her fight against him. She couldn't lay a single hit on him, and she knew he was holding back, else she was done for. Listen to that huge-titted queen. She is the only one that makes sense in your team. Akino remained silent. She did not know how to respond to Jaune's words while some clenched their fists in anger. Akino in the audience also remained silent. She did not know how to respond to the comment, while the rest of the Grimery peerage were angered by this. But they had to contain their anger since almost many of the audience hated them. Razor was watching with fear. He did not know what is going to happen since his fate was to be much worse than him. Issei walked over to Razor, who looked visibly afraid. Now let's finish this devil, Issei announced as Razor somewhat got his confidence back as he tried to swing at Issei with a fire-enhanced punch, but Issei caught it before punching Razor right in the face, which broke his nose as he stumbled back. But Issei wasn't done as he delivered another punch in Razor's gut before giving him a good book on the side of his head that made him see stars while dropping on his knees. Issei just grinned as he lifted Razor up by his hair before grabbed his head and kneeing him right in the chin that cracked his skull. Razor was pale seeing this. While his peerage looked on in fear, they were terrified on what Issei was planning to do. Claire and Revel were in tears seeing this happen. Mary was calming her down. She was wondering when this will end. She gave a glance to Hunter, Issei, who only shook his head. Mary understood this and pitted on what Issei has planned for Razor. Razor let out a painful howl as Issei threw his body across the field a few meters away. The Grimery peerage watching this were stunned by this as Jaune spoke. This was bound to happen. My teacher doesn't take kindly to arrogance and annoyances all that well. That's all the mighty Phoenix clan has to offer. Such a disappointment. Issei said loud enough so everybody of the broadcast could hear it. Issei looked at the down Razor as he kneeled a bit. You still alive down there? Issei asked as Razor barely got a word out. The Phoenix family present couldn't help but be angered and horrified by this. Claire wanted to have some words with Hunter. Issei, since she was unaware of this, but Mary stopped her. Claire spoke in response. Why are you? Mary cuts her off and speaks, to stop you from doing something stupid. This version of destroyed Surges and his slain god-class beings, you wouldn't stand a chance against someone like him. Even with that you wouldn't stand a chance. Claire looked at her for a moment as she looked down. She couldn't help but remain in tears. Sure, her brother was arrogant, keyword being was. But she never wanted him to die, especially by the hands of someone that she loved. Hunter, Issei looked at her for a moment, and remained serious. He didn't intend to kill Claire since this Issei also cared for her. He would have subdued and knocked her out. Breezer, on the other hand, was shivering. He was glad that Issei did not go this far during both of his matches against him. He pleased mercy. Issei only looked at him and grinned. He opened the zip of the jeans as he pissed all over his body. Really? Was pissing necessary? The one who asked was La Fei as Hunter. Issei spoke. Yep, and I have no regrets. And Phoenix family, watch what happens to Razor. The Phoenix family were shuddering with Razor being the most afraid, wondering what Issei had planned for him. Everybody that saw this looked in shock as Issei was humiliating Razor in front of the entire underworld for everybody to see. However, that wasn't even the best part of what Issei intended to do, as Razor suddenly let out a shrieking scream as his body suddenly started burning up as smoke appeared from his body. What is this? Razor yelled in agony as his body was burning up at such an alarming rate. Issei closed the zipper in his jeans before grinning down at him. He then spoke. Well, before the match, I have been drinking a lot of holy water. I was curious if the holy element still is present after you drink it. And it appears that it is true. Also, the holy element in the water that I drank is much more pure than in regular holy water bottles. So I guess you'll die from holy piss. Issei revealed as Razor could only scream in pure pain as his body started breaking down before being burned completely. Razor was pale seeing this fate of his, while the Phoenix peerages were crying seeing their master in such a state. Claire herself was crying seeing this as Mary and the others calmed her down. Claire looked towards Riaz with rage in her eyes. She was about to lunge towards Riaz, who was looking towards her in fear. She wanted to generate a barrier, making her even more terrified. Claire summoned flames in her hands as she shouted, "Gremory!" Claire was about to reach Riaz, but Revan stopped her and spoke while dispelling the flames. "As much as you want to kill her, you can deal with her once you get back. She is all yours." Claire had a scowl as she turned away and sat on her seat, saying nothing to anyone. She was beyond livid that the woman that was responsible for Issei's pain and could have potentially caused rise or also pain is still present. Riaz could only cry in fear. She was terrified of the hatred that was present in the theater for her, Aquino, and her peerage could only calm and console her. Her family had no words. Riaz was becoming worse and worse, and they didn't know on how to deal with her. Raythea could only announce, "Riza Phoenix has been eliminated. The winner is Riaz Gremory and her peerage." The voice announced, but nobody cheered as they all were too stunned at what just happened. The only one who wasn't stunned was Issei, who just grinned at nobody in particular. The screen soon turns to black. The audience were stunned by this, as Revan had spoken. "We will be taking a 10-minute break and then start with the next viewing." The audience nodded, wondering what viewing are they going to show. The audience were interested for the final part. Revan then spoke, "Before we begin, I would like to bring some guests." He snapped his fingers. As 5 people had joined in, the audience recognized them, especially Hades and Nyx, both of whom had scowls and clenched their fists in anger. Persephone was stunned seeing them here. They were none other than the Greek gods Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, Artemis, and Athena. Zeus was described to be a blonde-haired man who had a mustache. It almost seemed to look like a handlebar mustache. His hair was longer than most males, reaching all the way below neck length. He is stated to have worn a crown and a toga. He also wore slippers. He held a crackling lightning bolt in his hand. Er also had a crown and had silver hair and green eyes, her braided over one shoulder. She wore a dress that shimmered with colors like peacock feathers. She seemed to be wearing a white dress that extended all the way down to her lower legs. Poseidon seemed to be a black hair, a neatly trimmed black beard, a deep tan and sea green eyes that were surrounded by sun crinkles that told one he was prone to smiling. His hands are also scarred like an old-time fisherman's. When casual, he wore Birkenstocks, khaki Bermuda shorts, a Tommy Bahama shirt with coconuts and parrots all over it, and a cap decorated with fishing lures, which says Neptune's lucky fishing hat. Athena was a beautiful young woman that had purple hair and light green eyes. She seemed to be wearing a traditional Greek attire that seemed to be a fully dressed robe. However, they were decorated with gold ornaments that had one worn on her chest. She also wore a necklace and 2 earrings on each ear. She held a scepter staff in her hands, which circular at the top made of gold. Artemis was also a beautiful young woman with round blue eyes and long white hair, with the bottom of her hair attaches to a large circular ornament. She wears long white dress with red tip at the bottom, a silver necklace, and a pair of sandals. Like her origin, Artemis wields large bow which is capable of firing arrows made of pure energy as a weapon. The Greek gods wondered where they were right now as Revan floated towards them and spoke, "Greetings, Greek gods, I was the one that brought you here." Zeus stormed up to him and spoke, "I hope you have a good reason for bringing us here, human." Revan shook his head and snapped his fingers and spoke, "Just for the record, my name is Revan, and secondly, yes, I wanted to show you something, the multiverse if you may." The 5 gods were intrigued by this, as Hera asked, "So the rumors are true, there are different universes?" "Yes, they are, Hera. You may all want to sit down, and yes, there are some fellow gods in the audience." Revan pointed towards Odin, Thor and Vidor, which did surprise them. They even saw Sergiches and the others as well. Hades, Nyx and Persephone were fortunately not noticed for now. "So on whose reality are we watching?" Athena asked with curiosity and interest, as Revan answered, "We are watching the Isseiverse, basically the multiverse of your Earth, to put in short." Artemis had a frown. She was not a fan of men in any way, as she muttered, "That damned man thing." Athena noticed this and spoke, "Artemis." Athena could only hope that Artemis would change. She feared that if she continued this attitude of hers, something horrible may happen. "Anyways, we want to ask, where is the pillar anyway? I see his group of gals, but he is nowhere to be seen," Poseidon asked, to which Revan snapped his fingers and memories were inserted. He had fortunately sealed their powers without them knowing, so that this problem bunch wouldn't cause any problems. The Greek gods looked towards the girls and those that supported the infidelity that had happened. "I see," Poseidon responded. As he responded, "Don't come crying when he does live a happy life. Correct, none of you have the right to go near him. But on a serious note, had you girls broken up or in Arena and Ravel's case spoke to him about his perversion, we wouldn't be in this situation to begin with." Artemis remained silent. She frowned upon the girls' actions. "We can only hope he works with us." Hera spoke as Zeus added, "We can only hope he did not take infidelity well." Hera nodded. She wondered if the viewing will change Zeus's nature. She could only hope for the best. The viewing changes several weeks later. Issei's actions did cause a turmoil in the underworld, especially with what he had done to Riser, but Seraphol spoke to them, along with the 4 Satans, to not provoke him. The elders were angry, but Aduka pointed out on what happened 3 years ago to Lord Agar's, and later to Sergich's and Graphia, which made them all quieten up. All in all, they relented and hated Issei, but they couldn't do anything about it. Old hags. They never change. Hunter. Issei commented in response as he looked towards Aduka and Seraphil and added, "You two made the right choice. It was the logical to do. Them coming after you would only cause you more problems." Seraphol spoke in agreement. "Yep, and from what you can tell, you didn't want to deal with this taps fingers in a mocking manner supernatural bullshit." "Yep, and if you didn't, scores of bodies would have fallen." Hunter. Issei responded as the 2 Satans nodded in understanding. They even dealt with Kakabil thanks to Raynor, who had assisted him in finding the base. She was proven to be useful and trustworthy. As a result, Issei had decided to give Raynor her own gear. She was now wearing a white and black bra, a pleated miniskirt. She also had a top that she wore instead of a thong, and had worn black leggings and black heels. She also wore black gloves and black elbow guards that allowed she wielded a giant spear which can throw and return back to her anytime. "I really don't get it. Why did you make me wear this clothing?" Raynor asked, to which Issei responded, "This is because you will need for your upcoming expeditions. You will be taking your own bounty hunting tasks. That is why Zaz trained you, remember? Despite being expelled from Grigori, I made sure that you would be ready when you are tasked with the bounty hunting. Even Ingvald and Tiamat have their own gear." Tiamat and Ingvald nodded in agreement. Despite the maid costumes they were in, each of the girls had their own gear. Even John had his own gear. Raynor looked at her new clothing in surprise. She did notice so much in the last viewing, but she was intrigued by what she was wearing as she asked Hunter. "Issei, Hunter?" "Yes, Raynor. Well, I oversaw your training whenever I could. I noticed you rely too much on your magic. All you do is generate light weapons and attack your target. So that is why I asked from a certain contact to generate a throwable spear that can return to you upon command. It is based on technology, so you can still fight even when you don't have your magic with you." Raynor noted this down, as she knew that she was powerless without her fallen magic. She wondered if she would ever learn to fight like her counterpart. Mary was also concerned. She could only hope that the person that caused Twasizo much pain would leave him alone. Otherwise she fears that once again she would hurt her brother. Tiamat and Ingvald were curious on their gear, the former being more so, as long as she got out of her maid costume. Additionally, the audience were surprised by Kakabil's fall. Then again Raynor working with them did allow them to defeat the fallen angel much quicker. Soon enough, someone teleported inside the room. It seemed to be an ancient Greek with a symbol. And soon enough the appearance of a tall skeleton dressed in attire worn by high priests gives off a creepy aura. Despite having no eyes, his eye sockets can glow to give the appearance of eyes. This was Hades, the god of the death. "Ah, the god of the death, what can I do for you?" Issei asked, to which Hades responded, "I am going to need someone to be eliminated, and not just one person, but her entire squad." "Eliminated?" Issei asked with a surprising tone. As he smirked, "Now, who does one of the top 10 require me to eliminate?" Hades took a deep breath, as Tiamat approached towards Hades providing a glass of water. The underworld god looked around to see that a crow and a bat had joined the group, but he kept to himself so as to not provoke him in any way. Ingvald and Raynor frowned at Hades's racist views towards devils and fallen angels. However, They kept quiet, knowing full well that they stood no chance against him in any way. Persephone only shook her head and sighed, knowing how much Hades has changed. She gave a glance to Hades, wondering whether he would have a change of heart. She had witnessed signs of his old self appearing. Maybe more of the concept viewing will do change his heart. Nyx looked at Hades, wondering what his current intentions are. In the meantime, the Greek gods were having their own thoughts on the matter. Brother is up to his shenanigans again. Zeus spoke with a bit of a mocking tone as Poseidon added, I agree, and we have to clean up his mess like we always do. Well, I probably will have to cancel going to the bar this evening with my wife Amphitrite, due to the paperwork like I have been doing for the past few months. Hera also added, you should probably put a leash on your brother, he needs to be kept an eye on, he will only cause problems. Hera added to Zeus, who nodded. Artemis and Athena remained quiet, having their own thoughts upon this. I wonder who Hades wants to eliminate now? Artemis asked, to which Athena spoke, my guess, he must want to deal with someone that is causing problems to his plans. He did try to get rid of Office and failed miserably. All this was heard by Hades, who was gritting his teeth in anger. He detested his faction after how much they ignored and abandoned him when they needed him the most, especially after Persephone's death. He was calmed down by Nyx since she knew it was pointless to deal with him. Persephone also had a frown, seeing the attitude. They haven't noticed her yet, and wondered if they would change. Revan smirked, knowing full well what is going to happen to them, especially to Zeus. In the meantime, Issei gave a glance towards one of the Greek gods, knowing who exactly was Hades going to ask for. I wish for you to eliminate Artemis and her huntresses. Issei and his group were caught off guard, as they asked, Artemis and her huntresses. Yes, I am willing to pay you a lot of gold in order to get rid of them. Issei seemed interested in the quest. As they spoke, go on. The Greek faction minus Hades, Nyx and Persephone were in uproar, especially Zeus, Artemis and Athena. Artemis was stunned by the fact and gritted her teeth in anger. Zeus shouted with fury, that bastard. How dare he attack my daughter? I wish to make him pay. Revan spoke with a smirk. If you are wondering, he is actually right there in the audience. Revan pointed his finger towards Hades, who himself was stunned by the viewing. He never thought that he would harm Artemis. He never had a reason to do so. Persephone also looked in disbelief. She looked at Hades, who was stunned, seeing that he is also surprised by this revelation. Nyx was confused. Why would Hades do this? You bastard. Zeus was about to unleash lightning, with Artemis following suit, but to their surprise, their lightning and bow respectively never came in their hands. Revan walked forward and spoke, I am afraid I can't let you fight in my theater. How dare you, you mortal? Zeus was flung to the seat and was forcefully being seated. There were soon cuffs that had locked his arms, completely sealing him in his seat. Artemis looked in horror and shouted, Father. Revan looked towards Artemis and spoke, Sit down, Artemis. Artemis seemed reluctant at first, but Revan spoke, Sit down. Artemis nodded as she took her seat. As she looked towards her father, who was angry and fearful at what happened, Revan gave a glance towards the other Olympians ready to lunge at Hades, and spoke, Do you also need an invitation to sit down? The Olympians nodded and sat down as Poseidon asked, Why do you defend him? 1. I don't want a scene when the viewing is going on. I get annoyed pausing and replaying it for no reason. And 2. I don't want a mess in my theater, especially one that involves blood or body fluid. If you want to take up issues, do it when you are out of the theater. Poseidon nodded in understanding as they all continued the viewing. Revan sighed and played it. He probably is going to have to deal with them since he brought them here. I want to eliminate her is because of her recent activities. She has been going to America. She has been hunting and camping there. Now this wouldn't be a problem. But she and her huntress has been killing any men or couples that are also camping there. Her hatred of men has no bounds, and she often ignores the pleas of any of the men that are begging for mercy. Issei intently listened. He was curious on why Hades wants his own niece dealt with. He then spoke. I see. Issei gave a glance towards John, who also was keen. He internally smirked, since if he does defeat Artemis, his training will be complete. I like that man has a chance against me. Artemis spoke with a mocking tone and with utter disdain as Hunter. Issei spoke, I wouldn't be so sure, Goddess Sama. Hunter? Issei's tone was mocking, as Artemis responded, What do you mean by that, mortal? Just watch, you will see on what is going to happen to you, and trust me, you will know why you shouldn't underestimate my student, or humans in general. Artemis looked towards Hunter Issei with a murderous look who ignored her. Zeus was angry, but the chains weren't letting him go in any way. So will you accept this quest? Hades asked, to which Issei was about to respond. As John spoke, I wish to accept this quest. Issei smirked upon this, as he had spoken. Guess you got our answer, Hades. Keep the payment ready. I don't take kindly to those that don't pay me, Hades. Hades nodded, knowing how dangerous the man is, as he snapped his fingers, sending half of the payment to Issei. Hades then spoke, this is 30% of the payment I am giving you. The rest will be done upon the job completed. I hope you can understand. If Artemis is not stopped, the underworld will be overloaded, and handling that many souls, and judging them takes some time. That is why you must eliminate her. Hades's words made not an understanding, as he had teleported away. Then spoke. Get yourself geared up, we are going on a big hunt today. John, you are the one that volunteered, so it would be best if you come up with a strategy and defeat the goddess. John nodded, with the girls giving their own nod. Issei had a secret ally that was willing to work with him. A certain white dragon empress will be joining him for the fight. Valerie herself was surprised by this. She wondered how this Issei and her counterpart had met. She then asked, how did I meet Issei? Hunter, would you explain this one? Hunter. Issei nodded in response. Yes. So once I took down Kokabiel and decided to drag his ass back to Zaz, I had to run in with you. You, being the battle maniac that you are, decided to take me one-on-one with the condition that the loser does anything the winner asks. You lost, and now, you listen to everything I say. Valerie nodded in understanding. Inside, she wondered what relationship her counterpart has. She hoped it was not antagonistic. And if you are wondering, no, Valerie, Hunter does not hate your counterpart, and neither does she hate him. In fact, if you are wondering, Valerie is also in a relation with Issei. Hunter. Issei agreed to this, as Valerie became beet red and turned her gaze away from Revan while her group were teasing her, making her even more embarrassed. Albion could only shake his head and sigh. Out of all the people, the Red Dragon is the last person he wanted her to date. He could only hope that Valerie fixes his broken heart. The girls that liked Issei minus Ingvald were jealous of Valerie. The reason Ingvald was not jealous was because she also was in a relationship with Issei. She wondered if Rainer was in a relationship with Hunter. Issei. She hoped not, since in her eyes, Rainer doesn't deserve a man like Issei. Artemis, on the other hand, had different thoughts, as she thought, that squadron has no chance against me. They will all die by my hands, that is for sure. The scene changes to Bighorn National Forest, where Artemis and her huntresses were last seen. John was seen walking towards the dense forests, and looked around. He knew that sooner or later, one of the huntresses of Artemis would locate and try to kill him. He soon did according to his plan, as he set up a camping tent, some fire and some marshmallows, as he patiently waited for a prey, since he knew sooner or later they were going to come to him. An arrow was coming to him, with speeds on par with bullets. Well, that John boy is dead. Artemis spoke with a mocking tone and utter disdain. She has no tolerance for those that think of harming her huntresses or her family. Some of the audience glared at her with anger, while others did so with shock. Hunter? Issei smirked, knowing how her fate is, and it is not pretty in any way. John catches the arrow and crushes it with ease. He smirked, knowing that his first part of luring the huntress has played into fruition. His goal was simple. He and his group will take out as many huntresses before the big catch, Artemis herself, comes out. He also had a plan for Artemis as well. John disappeared from the location, having an idea where he was. Artemis was gritting her teeth in anger while glaring at Hunter Issei, who didn't give two shits about it. They knew he survived and wondered if their Issei was a threat. If he was, then they had to deal with him. Here is the thing about my student, everyone. Hunter Issei spoke, garnering everyone's attention as he continued. While he may not be as strong as me, you must all know something about him. He is one of the most excellent strategists that I have ever met. He is not someone to be taken lightly, and can catch you off guard, especially when you underestimate him. Wait, that means? Sergiches asked, to which Hunter? Issei spoke. Yes, Ekes, you are right on that one. He is the one that made the plan for dealing with Artemis and her huntresses. Sergiches and the others nodded. Many were curious on John's strategy. While the Greeks, especially Artemis and Zeus, were angry at this, they knew Hunter Issei survived and had a very bad feeling about it. The huntress that shot the arrow gritted her teeth in anger. She tried to escape, only to be met with a gun hole aimed towards her face before she could react. Bam! The huntress's head exploded as John smoked off his CCW revolver. The corpse of the body fell to the ground as John looked at the corpse while speaking. So they had longevity, not true immortality. What a disappointment. John spoke as he leaped down from the tree. He knew that the gunshot would attract the others to this location as well. He smirked as he gave a glance to his team, who were well hidden in the trees and other bushes. This was all part of his plan. He had figured that the huntress and Artemis herself must have sensitive hearing which would allow them to hunt for their targets, or in some cases men that were in their supposed territory which weren't there to begin with. This would bring them all here to this location to investigate. Nouveau. Artemis screamed in anger and horror when she saw her huntress die like this. Athena and the others also looked in horror, with the former calming Artemis down and stopping her from doing something foolish. Told you, he is an amazing strategist. Hunter spoke proudly of his student. The fact that he had thought this through really showed how capable of a strategist he is. I guess. Azazel spoke with intrigue, pondering on what else the boy is capable of. Odin and the other gods looked at Artemis. They knew that she shouldn't be in America since that was not her territory, and worse, she and her huntress shouldn't be killing innocent men and couples. This was something she should have thought of before doing this. He soon looked at the corpse, wondering if there was any weapons he could salvage. He looked towards the bow, checking its tensile strength and tolerance. He knew that Greek weaponry was powerful. He wondered on how powerful it really was. Suddenly, he noticed himself to be surrounded by several huntresses that belonged to Artemis, with all of them appearing to be in the age groups of 18 to 30 years old, almost akin to teenagers or young adults. Drop the weapon, man, or you will regret it. The oldest one, who seemingly had blonde hair and green eyes, had spoken as John spoke with a mocking tone. Okay, I will. I will. The huntress still had their weapons aimed as John secretly generated a ball of aura and boom. There was a light explosion that distracted them, allowing Issei, Ingvald, Tiamat and Rainer. Valir also joined them, who was in her balance breaker. Tiamat had let some of her draconic traits out, with her horns being the most visible, as she was wearing a blue top now and black shorts. She wore a black arm coverings that were meant extended all the way till a bit lower of the shoulder. Her coverings were fingerless, and she had some of her treasures adorn her gear. While Ingvald went for a simpler gear, she wore a princess vest and a jeans, along with sports shoes. She carried several bombs in her dimensional gear, and underneath her vest she wore a white bra. Both Tiamat and Ingvald smiled, looking at their choice of attire they have been wearing, although Tiamat was surprised as she asked, "Hunter, mind if I ask you something?" Raven paused the viewing. "Sure, go ahead." Tiamat noted two specific things as she asked. First is the hand guards. Why do I wear them? And secondly, why did I use the treasure that I often keep in my cave in my gear? Hunter. Issei thought for a moment before speaking. First thing, hand guards. Yes, I suggested them since you can't always rely on your dragon scales to defend yourself, especially when there is magic or weapons designed to breach through them. These hand guards are magically attuned with defensive magic of another faction to make sure that you aren't hurt by any dragon slayer, especially when you are in your human form. It's best to stay safe than sorry. Tiamat nodded in agreement, as she understood Hunter Issei's reasoning. Plus, the two hand guards are designed to generate a barrier that protects you from dragon slayer magic. So in case Artemis and her company does decide to use dragon slayer magic, you can defend yourself without any problem. Tiamat nodded. She had a small smile on her face seeing how much Hunter Issei cares for her counterpart, as he continued. As for your second question, the treasures you specifically wield are attuned to your dragon self. This allows you to wield a much higher portion of strength, stamina, speed and magic that you would have in your dragon form as opposed to what you would have normally. My estimation is around 70% of your original dragon strength. This one was my Tiamat's suggestion and I agreed to it. Hell, I even arranged the clothing to attune to her gems and other treasures. Tiamat again nodded in agreement, seeing on how much he cares for her and understands her, letting her do what she wants despite her counterpart serving as a maid. She looks around to see Crom with a cheeky smile as he asked, "Why are you smiling?" Tiamat shook her head and spoke, "No reason." Tiamat pondered if her essay was like that, but then shook her thoughts. She still hasn't forgiven Dreg and won't for a very long time. "Hunter? Hunter?" Issei looked towards Ingvild, and she asked, "Is my gear attuned as well?" "Not as much as Tiamat or Rainer's, but it still is. The vest you wear allows breathing room and monocirculation in your body, allowing you to fight longer and more stronger as well." Ingvild nodded in understanding as Hunter continued, "Then we have your pants that are specially designed for more flexibility, almost akin to a diver's suit or anything stretchable based, which allows you to maneuver around the field with ease, allowing you to perform flips and attacks without problems. You will be seeing a lot of this." Ingvild nodded in agreement. She was pondering on trying her counterpart's fighting style. But first, she wanted to see what she is capable of. Artemis and the Greeks' gods minus Hades, Nyx and Persephone, were starting to get a bit concerned. At first it was just one man without a sacred gear, but now they had to deal with the whole squad. However, they were confident that they will win. The huntresses were shocked as Issei spoke with a mocking tone. "Seems like your plan worked of attracting them like flies. Guess we can finally get to fight these legendary huntresses that belong to Artemis herself. Wish I could fight her though." The one who spoke was Valerie as Issei spoke. "Well, we will intervene when John needs our help. I believe that he has a plan for Artemis." "Right. That is why you asked for that from me." "Right." John nods in understanding as they all got ready to fight with the lead huntress shouting, "Get them." The audience were intrigued by the fight that was going on. With Artemis speaking, they will fail their mission and get slaughtered like pathetic lambs. Everyone looked at the man-hating goddess in surprise, shock, and confusion, seeing her attitude. Rainer, Valerie, Tiamat, and Ingvild were the angriest, with Tiamat wanting to put the arrogant goddess in her place. Hunter. Issei glared at Artemis since she was no different from his Artemis, but someone who hadn't spoken for a while, that being Office, had spoken. "You know, your arrogance and blind hatred has been your downfall in many timelines. You are going to watch that yourself, Artemis. Either you will die horribly or you will be stuck with a fate worse than death. Now just watch, as your huntress fall, and soon you, the goddess of hunting, will fall by the blade of the very people she detests." Phyllis's words made Artemis really angry, but she had to sit down and relent. She refused to believe Phyllis's words. She was calmed down by Athena, who couldn't help but agree with the Ouroboros dragon's words. She wondered if she could change or not. Tiamat leaped in the air, using her dragon wings as she flew in the air. The huntresses raised their bows and started to fire, only for the Chaos Karma dragon to close her hands in AX motion, generating a barrier. It blocked all the arrows with ease, much to their shock due to it being dragon-slaying arrows, as once the arrows were done, Tiamat started to breathe some flames. She soon unleashed the flames upon the huntresses, who screamed in pain as she leaped on the ground. She soon saw several more huntresses trying to ambush her from the behind, only for Tiamat to grow a tail using magic and swat them like flies. She once again flew in the air, grew her hands into talons and sliced them in half using her claws. Tiamat soon noticed more huntresses joining the fight as they were generating an incantation. She leaped in the air and unleashed some flames which were blocked by a small batch. She gritted her teeth in annoyance, knowing that she would be needing more power as someone called out to her, "Tiamat, let's work together." The one who shouted was Ingvild, who had kicked a huntress, ending her flying. She used the water under the ground and unleashed a very hot stream of water, which started to peel off the skin, flesh, blood, and organs of the huntresses that are present. Artemis looked in horror, seeing the way her huntresses were getting slaughtered like lambs. Tiamat then spoke with a mocking tone, "Guess your batch of huntresses are the lambs instead of us." Artemis looked at her with a murderous look as Tiamat glared back and spoke, "Never underestimate a dragon, Artemis. We will burn you to the ground just like our kind has done so to you people." Prom nodded in agreement as Artemis gritted her teeth and sat down, albeit reluctantly. She was not happy with what had happened to her huntresses, and she was going to make the Jaune pay for his actions. Ingvild herself was surprised by how brutal she was. She never knew water could be this dangerous, but her hunter counterpart displayed a very different method of eliminating her enemies. She gave a glance towards Lucius, who didn't seem that surprised by what he was witnessing. He knew how dangerous Leviathan's power can be if used correctly, and this Ingvild learned the method. Tiamat nodded as Ingvald's eyes glow in a lavender color as the area around her is enveloped in lavender light particles, and she started to sing, which increased Tiamat's strength and other abilities even higher, as she exclaimed, "Sweet, thank you, Ingvild." Ingvild nodded in response as she started to sing, which enhanced Tiamat's abilities. She soon shouted, "I am all fired up now." Tiamat blew some more enhanced flames and fired it across the huntress group, who all were incinerated alive despite the shields protecting them. They screamed in pain while they were being burned alive. The Yamato returned back to the ground to see Ingvar grabbing more huntresses and using the water surrounding her to unleash a very strong tidal wave towards the huntresses, causing them to get swept by the intense water pressure. Leaping in the air, she used a grenade that had electric magic and threw it towards the huntresses, causing them to scream in pain. Once she was done, Anvil brought another grenade which had condensing ice magic inside of it. She then used magic to maintain the water stream and throw the grenade. After a few minutes, it condensed into pure ice. The huntresses were frozen solid, all of them having looks of fear and desperation, like they wanted to escape, but couldn't. Soon enough, Tiamat spoke. "Want me to do the honors?" Ingvild shrugged in response as Tiamat's claws grew, and she slashed all of them into pieces, killing them all within an instant. As Ingvild spoke, "Guess that's a job well done." Tiamat nodded as they watched the others slaughter the huntresses and defeat them with ease. Artemis was now really getting fearful of what will happen. She believed that her huntresses would be able to take down Tiamat and Ingvild, but the two effortlessly slaughtered a huge portion of huntsmen and huntresses like it was nothing. Athena and Poseidon were calming her down while scowling, remembering that it was Hades that had brought Issei and his squad to eliminate her and her huntresses. Valerie spoke to Ingvild. "You two made quite the good combo." "Yeah, I wish that she would let go of her grudge against Issei. She shouldn't beat him up for being the Red Dragon Emperor." Helmenhild added her own words. "True, and if she does, she will get the short end of the stick. We honestly don't know what he is capable of right now." "So true." Ingvild glanced towards Mary. The only people that knew about Issei's true power were Ingvild and Mary. They didn't know if Tiamat would survive against that Issei, especially in his full power. "Probably, she will let go of her grudge in the future," Le Fay added, to which Arthur responded, "We can only hope, Le Fay, we can only hope." Baika then spoke with a curious tone, "Although I wonder how the others will fare against the huntresses that they are assigned to." "True, I am curious on my own strength," Valerie added, as they all continued to watch the fight that had happened against the huntress army. Many screams of huntresses were heard as the attacker was revealed to be Rainer, who had received her spear back. She was surprised by how powerful the weapon was as she made it loud. This spear. It really is powerful." Rainer spoke, to which Valerie spoke in her armor. "Of course it is. Issei made sure Azazel fulfilled the end of his deal. He did receive 50 million United States dollars. And the spear instead of his awarded 100 million United States dollars. Rainer nodded, looking at the spear. It was a red and glowing spear at the tip, while the hilt was black in color. The red glowing spear had a mark of fire when Rainer commands it. Valerie leaped in the air as she joined the fight. She generated multiple magic circles and unleashed demonic magic and unleashed magic blasts towards them. The huntresses uses magic circles to defend themselves, but Valerie's gear reacts and speaks. Divide. 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 The huntresses lost their power, much to their shock, as Valerie responded, "Thanks for the juice. Now consider this return." Valerie retorted by unleashing multiple more magic circles upon them. As they tried to run, they tried to escape, but there was nothing that they could do as they were completely evaporated out of existence. They screamed in pain while they were being evaporated. Valerie was not surprised by her capability, and with this iteration of Rainer working with her, her chances of defeating them were pretty high. That spear. Did you, Rainer asked, to which hunter? Issei responded, Yep, Zos made it for you upon my request. That spear really does strengthen what you are capable of. Aye. Rainer wanted to speak, but she remained quiet. She had no words to speak. She was grateful for Issei's hunter counterpart for helping her and making her stronger, but she did not know or understand why. Since in her eyes, Issei hates her and wants her dead. Rainer didn't understand the feeling, but she started to feel bad. She did not know what she was feeling. She was starting to feel bad for what she had done to Issei in Asia, but mostly Issei since he truly loved her at one point. Rainer, on the other hand, had a serious tone, releasing her 8 wings due to the training she had received. She would normally unleash a barrage of light spears, but she decided to condense her magic into the spear, which started to glow an even brighter red. Let's see if you overconfident huntresses handle this. Rainer smirked as she threw the spear, which went faster than the human eye could see. The spear immediately killed a few of the huntresses, and soon it triggered a massive explosion as many were engulfed by the explosion. Rainer brought back her spear and smiled, seeing on how dangerous the spear is. How much do you think we must have gotten? Rainer asked, to which Valerie spoke. Judging by our attacks and actions, around 40%. That means Ingvald and Tiamat have slaughtered around the same bunch, which makes it 80%. Guess the boys are going to have all the fun. Valerie gave a sigh and nodded. At the very least they were able to slaughter 40% of Artemis's forces. Artemis was crying, seeing on how many of her huntresses were getting slaughtered. She glared at Hunter Issei for accepting the quest, who could feel the glares inside. He then spoke. If you want to pin the blame on someone, pin the blame on my client, not me. He is the one that killed your huntress. I am just a simple man making his way in this supernatural world. Hunter Issei spoke with a shrug, to which Azazel retorted with slight mocking tone. Simple, my ass. You are rich as hell. Well, if the job is quite good, why not demand for more money for my services? I mean, slaying gods is no joke. Hunter Issei spoke in retort, to which Poseidon speaks. You are only saying this because you only care about money, nothing more. You have no shred of empathy for others. You money-grubbing. They must stop you right there, Poseidon. Poseidon was surprised by him being cut off, as Hunter Issei continued. If there is anything I am not a fan of, it is someone preaching morals, especially if it is from you knowing what kind of a person you really are. Try preaching that morals when you need to starve in order to survive. Let's see how long your morals last. I had to kill just to survive once upon a time, but once I started to get, Issei spoke coldly. As many were surprised that this Issei had to deal with starvation, several had empathy and pity for him. Poseidon remained silent and sat down. He was regretting asking towards Hunter Issei about his past. John and Issei were looking towards the lead huntress, who had tears in her eyes. She had already called Artemis to assist her, but the rest were all dead by her hands. John aimed her pistol at her and spoke. That should do it. I do believe that your boss will appear soon enough. Right. The lead huntress gritted her teeth in anger and spoke. Lady Artemis will make you pay in blood. You will all regret it. Whatever you say. After all, killing you girls was part of my job, nothing personal. John pulled the trigger and bam. The head of the lead huntress was blown off. As Issei had spoken, now we wait for the big one to come. Speaking of which, did Revel keep the end of her deal? John nodded as he had responded, Yep, that Phoenix girl kept her end of the deal and provided us 1,000 Phoenix tears that would supply us for a lifetime. It would cause a dent in the business of Ravel's family, but that is not our problem, right? Issei nodded as he spoke. True that. Wait, what? Revel asked with a surprised tone, to which Hunter Issei spoke. Well, I would make the most out of it. So why not have 1,000 Phoenix tears? I have only used 10 of them thought till now. But they have been quite useful for any injuries that my guild sustains. They don't have my regeneration. I see. Revel spoke, to which some of the guests smiled. He does care for something in his life, like many of the Essiel. Tiamat was having second thoughts on demanding the treasure back from Issei. Maybe she can make Issei an exception to returning the treasure. The bad feeling in Rainer's heart was increasing. She did not understand why. Artemis, on the other hand, was too grief-stricken to hear this. Her whole huntress squadron was wiped out without any mercy. Athena and the other gods were helpless seeing this. Persephone gave a glance towards Hades and asked, "So Hades, did you intend to do the same too, or Artemis too?" "No, but I believe my counterpart at least had a good reason to do this. Even then, I wonder why Zeus didn't do anything about this." Persephone wondered the same thing as she gave a glance to Zeus, who was only gritting his teeth in anger. She didn't know how to deal with this. Her whole situation is a mess. Soon enough, a magic circle opened up, revealing none other Artemis, who had a look of anger in it. She was horrified to sense her huntresses being wiped out. She gritted her teeth and spoke, You will pay for what you have done. You men are all the same, rotten vermin that plague this planet, and tonight you shall be vanquished." Artemis angrily shouted as she tackled John, who dodged with ease. He brought out a special katana that, when touched, would apply a curse wound that prevents any recovery magic. This was something that was given to him by Issei. Many frowned upon Artemis's thought process. They glared at the Greek goddess, who was not in a mood for dealing with them. But before a fight could break out, Athena stopped Artemis and spoke, "Not now, sister." Artemis looked at her and spoke, "Why?" "Because of him. All of my huntresses are dead. All men are nothing but vermin and disgraces. We are better off without them." The people in the audience were getting even more angrier as before anything problematic. Revan released a calming aura which made everyone lose their anger as he boomed, "Enough!" They all looked towards Revan as he had spoken to Athena. "Calm your sister down. Her attitude is worsening the bad situation. If she does not behave, I will make sure she does, and it is not going to be pretty." Athena nodded as she spoke with a pleading tone, "Artemis, please calm down. Your hatred towards men won't do you any good. Please, you can discuss this whenever we get a break." "We will get a break, right?" Revan nodded as Athena spoke. "See, sister, please, we both will have a conversation with Hunter. You can count on it." Artemis sniffled as she turned her gaze away. Some still glared towards her as Revan spoke while clapping his hands. "All right, everyone, the viewing is going on." The audience continued to watch as they all were intrigued by what they were witnessing. John knew he only had to land one hit with the specific weapon he had borrowed from Issei. The weapon was something he would never give to anyone due to how dangerous it is, but he needed it. Artemis brought out her bow and started to fire heavy projectile shots towards John, who kept evading the shots. He turned his gaze around to see the amount of destruction he was causing. John looked at her anger and smirked. He had a new idea. He knew on how he had to deal with Artemis. He decided to use some of his aura to distract her, thus making her lose her concentration as he dashed with the katana head. His training with Tiamat and Issei allowed him to dodge any projectiles that Artemis fired at him. He soon unleashed a slash that was aimed at her hand, causing her to drop her bow. She gritted her teeth in anger as she tried to use healing magic, but it didn't work. She noticed the wound was cursed. John soon acted quickly and slashed again. This caused her to back away before she could get hit. Artemis gritted her teeth in pain and anger. She knew that John used advantage of her anger to separate her from her bow. He then picked it up and spoke. "Well, that's such a nice bow." John picked it up, as this angered the Greek goddess even more. The Greek gods, especially Artemis, were surprised by this. As Artemis spoke, "How can this be possible? Is it not obvious? Your anger and prejudice of men, you underestimated John. Additionally, the fact that he was a mere human was an added influence on your prejudice, thus you lost your bow." "Hunter," Issei explained, making the audience nod while Artemis was starting to fear John as Ijuka asked, "And the katana?" "One of my weapons that we had to hunt. I let John keep it so that he can use it for his own journeys. He still has it, and takes good care of it. He even has a similar katana that cures and removes the curse effect and even heals the wound." Ijuka nodded in understanding, pondering on what else John can do now. Even without her bow, Artemis is a goddess and not someone to be trifled with. Artemis dashed towards John and unleashed a punch, which John used the bow to block. He was sent flying a few meters towards a tree, as John kept the bow in his pocket dimension. Artemis got even more angry as she followed it up with a kick which sent John flying in the air. Generating aura wings, he was starting to fly in the air. Artemis had a predatory smirk. she leaped in the air using her magic and decided to give a drop kick which sent him to the ground. There was a dust cloud. Artemis had a smirk. But to see that Jaune was missing, as Jaune fired a shot which she evaded, she looked at her attacker as Jaune had some of his clothes torn and was slightly bruised. And get me! Artemis dashed towards Jaune. She was ready to kill him for good. The Greek gods minus Hades, Nyx and Persephone, were hoping that Jaune would lose the fight, but they could only watch for the time being. The others were curious on how Jaune was planning to deal with the Greek goddess, as they knew she was far from done. Jaune had a plan in his mind. He had to lure Artemis in such a position that would allow him to trap and bind her for a short amount of time. He generated some strings with his aura and started to drop them. Artemis was too blinded by rage and fury for noticing this, as Jaune kept dropping them surrounding several trees and other locations. Artemis used some magic onto Jaune, who kept evading, but he was unable to evade everything as some grazed his body including his legs, which caused him to grit his teeth in pain. However, he kept going. He knew his aura would heal him. He looked towards Artemis with her shouting, "Back here, you man thing!" Jaune kept evading as he spoke mockingly, "Nah." Artemis was getting even more angry as he kept dancing and dashing around. The audience were pondering on why Jaune was making her chase around. They knew that he was not going to tire her in any way since a god's stamina far eclipses that of a human speed. Some of the smarter ones in the audience, like Ajuka, Azazel, Athena and El-Menhul to name a few, noticed the aura threads on specific locations, but they were pondering on why Jaune is using his aura to create aura threads. Issei watches with a smile. He knew he would intervene if things do go south. As someone flapped her wings, he looked to see Tiamat flying beside him as he asked, "So, I take it you are done with your cleanup?" "Yep. I'm involved and the others are clearing anything else that remains. The later the gods know, the better." Tiamat was looking at Jaune and spoke, "You let him fight Artemis alone?" "Yep, and he is doing a good job at that." Tiamat looked at him dumbfoundedly as she voiced her concerns. "But Issei, are you sure Artemis will kill that boy? I don't want to see him suffer again." Issei looked at her with a worried tone as he pulled her towards him, making her slightly less worried as he spoke. "He want Tia?" But Tiamat retorted as Issei had spoken, "Have faith in Jaune. We trained him to be the way he is supposed to be, and look at how he is going. Artemis is unable to even get to him. He is thinking of aiming his attack at the right time. Just trust him on this one." Tiamat could only look solemnly. She would intervene if things do go south. She knew Issei would also do the same. She nodded in understanding as she spoke. "I understand, but I am intervening if he gets too injured." Issei nodded in response as the duo nodded in acceptance. Some of the girls that had a crush or loved Issei had looks of jealousy or were making jealous noises. Their loved ones and other people were calming them down. Many smiled at the sweet moment that was happening between the two hunters. It seemed like they were watching their kid grow up. Tiamat was red seeing this. She couldn't believe her counterpart to be acting like this. However, she did have a question. If my counterpart likes Issei, what kind of a relationship do I have with Jaune? Revel was about to answer as hunter. Issei spoke, "I will take it from here. You see, Tiamat, as time passed with the two of you training him, the three of you became akin to a family. You see Jaune as a little one, and if anything happens to either me or Jaune, you will destroy the ones responsible no matter what happens." Tiamat nodded in understanding while trying her best to suppress her blush. The fact that she sees Issei as a mate was something, but Jaune as her little one was too much for her. The jealousy in the girls was intensifying even more, while Mary and those that cared for Issei knew that there was still the old Issei in them. They were happy knowing that hunter Issei was living in happiness. In the meantime, Jaune stood at the center as Artemis dashed towards the same spot ready to kill him, only for Jaune to leap in the air as he pulled the strings that he was setting on the ground. In mere moments, Artemis was completely bound using the aura strings, startling her, as she exclaimed, "What? How? Is it not obvious while you were blinded by your anger? I set this trap up. Now, it is time to end this." Artemis was using her superior strength to break free from the strings, but Jaune did not let that happen. He brought out the empty blade of nothingness, a dagger that had a red ruby on its hilt. Artemis was starting to break from the restraints, as Jaune used his aura to speed himself up and immediately stabbed Artemis in the head, causing her to scream in pain. Artemis was pale seeing herself like this. Athena held her with concern and worry. The Greeks were horrified by this, seeing Artemis's state, with Cersages recognizing the blade as he spoke. That blade, it is the same blade Hunter Issei used against me. Hunter Issei nodded with a smirk, he then spoke, you got that right. The blade as the viewing describes is the empty blade of nothingness. I had got this during a mission of retrieval courtesy of Erebus. The mention of her brother got Nyx's attention as she asked, you met my brother? I did, and before you ask, he is alive and well in my timeline. Nyx breathed a sigh of relief as she asked, then what do you mean courtesy of Erebus? To put it lightly, Erebus wanted me to head to a specific location in the Shinto territory to gain some treasures for himself. In return he promised to give me half of the treasures that I gained, along with proper payment for my services. This dagger is one of the treasures. Nyx nodded in understanding. She was happy that Issei did not kill her brother. Yasaka had a question of her own, which was on how Issei was able to enter the Shinto territory undetected, but soon remembered his experimentations and on how he can enter into different territories undetected. As for the blade, it is my most valuable weapon is the empty blade of nothingness, which has the ability to disrupt and seal away any kind of supernatural enemy when stabbed by it. Even ultimate-level gods will lose their divinity the moment their skin touches the blade. I think you know what this means, right? Hunter Issei's words made Artemis and the Greek faction minus Hades, Nyx and Persephone shocked and horrified, with the latter three also being stunned by this revelation. Zeus and Athena were tearing up upon realizing that Artemis won't live for much longer. Artemis muttered with shock and horror, with her speaking, how? This blade seals any divinity that it touches against. Right now you are a human, and any wound to a human skull is a death sentence. Artemis could only cry in defeat. She not only lost her powers in battle, but also she couldn't avenge her huntresses. She started to lose her vision, and soon she collapsed to the ground dead. The Greek gods that cared for her were crying for Artemis's death. Hades also shed some tears, but wiped them quickly. A small part of him still cared for her. Zeus was glaring at Issei, but he couldn't do anything due to him being still stuck in the chair. John removed the blade and cleaned it. He soon walked towards Issei and Tiamat, who were relieved that he was fine. He gave the blade to Issei, who put it inside as Issei spoke, good job, John. Thanks, Sensei. Tiamat gave a smile as she hugged John and spoke, I am just glad that nothing happened to you. John returned the hug of the Dragon King. She was more of a mother than his own birth mother was. Issei smiled seeing this, as they soon split up. Issei brought out one of the phoenix tears and healed him up. Sweet, so this is how the phoenix tears work. Issei nodded in understanding as they soon reunited with the rest of the group as Issei spoke, let's all head home. The Greek gods would have come to know the death of their fellow goddess. The group nodded as they all returned home. All in all, they won against Artemis and decided to celebrate their victory, especially when Issei revealed that it was John that killed Artemis. The screen turns to black as the Greek gods minus the three were angered by the fact that they were celebrating their daughter's death. Hunter Issei looked at their expressions and spoke, the fact that you don't keep a leash on Artemis is the reason that this happened. She must have killed many men for just a simple grudge of being men. If anyone is to blame for this, it is you. Either you can give up your biased views of men being the scourge of the planet, or simply die trying by a stronger man or even a woman that would do anything to protect this man. And besides, getting angry on the opposite gender must be so good, you woke one a bitch. It is no wonder no one respects or worships your sorry non-existent divinity. Hunter Issei spoke with a mocking tone as he continued, either change your views or you can keep being a bitch and pay the price. Artemis was in tears as she was weeping endlessly with Hunter Issei speaking. Oh, look at Hunter goddess, gonna cry? Hunter Issei spoke with a mocking tone, as the Greek gods near Artemis were about to speak, but they knew that this Issei was not going to hold any punches, and with their powers sealed, they were even more fearful of what he is capable of. For now they could only glare at him, which Hunter Issei not bothering to entertain them. Now we get to the last scene where the final goodbyes happened between John and Issei. The audience wondered what was going to happen, while some wanted to ask questions. Revan told them the questions will be answered once the viewing ends. The scene changes to 2 days later where Jaune is in for his final training lesson since he would soon be heading back to Remnant. Issei was watching him train as he soon clapped, garnering his attention. "Alright, that's enough with the training," Issei commanded with a clap as Jaune took a breather and spoke, "Well, I'll be damned. Seems like even I am done." "I agree. You have done quite well for someone that was deemed the weakest student in Beacon, but this would be the last time I would be training you, Jaune." Jaune was surprised by what his mentor had stated. He couldn't believe he would be hearing this one day. It has been years since Issei has been training the boy. "Did you know he was going to leave?" Mary asked to which hunter. Issei spoke, "Yep, sooner or later, he was supposed to go back to his world. He needed to continue his life there than here." "I see," Mary responded as she looked towards the final scene that was going to be played. "I see. So it is time to return." Issei nodded as he walked towards him and kept his hand on his shoulder. "Indeed, you are ready to face all those trials in your world. But remember, whatever you do, don't let anyone or anything interfere in your goals." Issei's serious words made Jaune nod, as he knew what this meant. He knew why Issei would see that, and he will follow his goals to the very end. "Your own path is yours to follow, and judging from what you told me in your world, there will be many that will stand in your way. There are obstacles that you need to overcome, nothing more, nothing less. Eliminate anyone that stands in your way and fulfill the goal you desire. From what you want, you no longer desire to be a huntsman, right?" Issei continued, to which Jaune nodded in response. "Indeed, all I see them is false heroes and frauds that ruin the motion of what heroes stand for. I will charter my own path and destroy those that stand in my way." Issei grinned in Jaune's response as he spoke. "Excellent, my young student. I wish you good luck for this journey. Your portal is where you'd been. It has been reactivated, so I'd think you should make haste, young man." Jaune nodded as he headed inside to get his stuff. He had already packed most of his stuff, so it would only take him a few moments to do so, and from the looks of it, Jaune knew he was going to go back. Falbium commented, to which Ijuka responded, "Yes, he did have to deal with those disgraces, right?" "Not necessarily, since they didn't want him to be a huntsman, he decided to now become one, especially after he saw their true selves due to his experiences." "Hunter," Issei spoke, as Ijuka nodded in understanding. Many of the audience agreed with Jaune's words of them being frauds and false heroes. They refused to see those morons as real heroes. He eventually came down with his suitcases. As he reached where Issei was present, he was near his courtyard, where he usually trains with him on a daily basis. The portal was right behind him, since he teleported to Issei's house all of a sudden, where he was noticed by him and another person. "Oh kid, I wish you the best of luck on things to come." Jaune nodded as he stepped into the portal. He waved goodbye to Issei, who returned the same as Jaune was teleported back to Remnant. "So do you two see each other again?" Claire asked. She had calmed down from her incident with Riser, to which Hunter. Issei nodded. "Yeah, we keep in touch. Even till today he still remains in touch with me." Claire nodded as she wondered on what journeys Jaune would have. The others also wondered on what journeys he would have in Remnant. Soon enough someone came in. This was none other than Tiamat, as she asked. "So he really left?" Tiamat asked with slight sadness as Issei responded, "The kid had to head back to his own world. You knew he couldn't stay with us forever, right?" "I know." Tiamat gave a sad sigh. She liked being with the kid. She hated what happened to the kid as she spoke. "If it were up to me, Master, I would have never let him go to that hellish world. I would have burned all those that had harmed him, even most of his pathetic excuse of the family." Tiamat spoke the last part coldly as Issei, although could care less about Remnant, he frowned at how their mentality worked like. But in his eyes he knew Jaune would cripple every last one of them that would get in his way at this point. Tiamat agreed with her counterpart. Like almost everyone in the audience, she hated the mentality the veiled citizens had for Jaune. She wished to burn them all down to the ground for such petty thoughts. "Yeah, I know. But if I know Jaune, let's just decide Remnant's in for a storm." Issei spoke with a grin, wondering on how he is going to deal with those fools and morons. They are nothing but obstacles that Jaune needs to crush. "I agree." Tiamat approached closer to her mate as the latter looked at her. He knew exactly on how to cheer her. Well, I was considering. Since that green-haired Beelzebub owes me a favor, I will probably ask him to create a portal ring that can take us there anytime we want. Wait, she looks after the house with the other two girls who see each other as sisters. They all love and care for Issei more than anyone else. The screen changes to black as Revan speaks, and with that, the short viewing of Supernatural Bounty Hunter has officially ended. The audience sighed in relief as they rested in their seats as Revan spoke. So how was the viewing? It was amazing in its own right, although it was short. Some of us enjoyed it really well. Sir Jessic spoke, despite being humiliated by Hunter. Issei, he did have some fun watching the viewing. He wondered what other viewings will they watch. Ijuka then spoke, so what do I owe Hunter? Issei. I helped you locate the crystals of the Malabranch that were stolen by Cow's brigade, so you task Issei with that. However, instead of money, Issei asked you to build a portal device, which you agreed upon doing so. Ijuka nodded to Hunter, Issei's words, as Seraphil asked with slight cheerfulness. So what are we watching next? Revan thought for a moment and spoke, we will be watching something interesting, since the concept viewing is still a bit corrupted. Instead of waiting, I will prepare another viewing. You all can till then take a break in the cafeteria. Seraphil nodded as the audience started to get up one by one. Zeus's restraints were opened as he scowled in response. However, he knew that he couldn't do anything again due to his powers being sealed. Otherwise, he would have destroyed Hunter. Is safe for killing his daughter. Thanks for listening to my video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment below your favorite part. Don't forget to support the author and his story in the description. Sayonara, see you in the next video.